emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 813.JB3829, certificate number 25481, the Mpemba effect.
Do you ice skate?
I have ice skated before, and it's struck me as one of those things that maybe will turn fun the 10th time you do it, but I did not.
You never made it to 10.
Fun. I was like already adult sized.
Oh.
So it just seemed like I would either fall or just my ankles would feel terrible or both.
So your kids don't ice skate?
My kids, I think, have both ice skated and like it more than me.
But Korea is a cold country. A cold country in the winter. Is ice skating not part of the culture?
I can't think of... I don't think there were skating rinks there when I was there. I mean, I'm sure there's more winter sports infrastructure now. They hosted the Olympics for crying out loud. But I was not aware of anybody ice skating. None of my friends owned ice skates.
Did little ponds freeze in the winter? Did you have freezy ponds?
We did have freezy ponds, but we wouldn't go out on them. I mean, Korea is cold in the winter. Cold, dry air comes down from Siberia in the winter, and then in the summer, hot air comes up from the South China Sea. So really, you get something awful all the time.
You get it all. It's like Ohio.
That's right. But I don't know. Is ice skating fun if you do it enough? Yes, right?
It was never fun for me. My perception of it when I was in grade school was, at least in Alaska, that you were either an ice skater or a skier. And although there were plenty of people that could do both, you kind of picked a track, ice skating or skiing.
Is there a demographic difference between the two, the Jets and the Sharks?
Yeah, I think so. Ice skating, hockey is a more blue collar sport. It's it's certainly violent. And
so the skaters were all tough hockey kids.
Yeah.
They weren't like the figure skating girls.
No, I feel like, skating isn't like a sport for poor kids, but it is a sport for at my high school, it was kind of more popular than football in terms of all of the cliches of like Nebraska high school football were true in Anchorage, but of hockey. We had a football team and they were state champs, but the hockey team was where the heart and soul.
The hockey center is the quarterback of Anchorage High.
Yeah, and they were the guys that drove the jack-up pickup trucks and wore acid-wash jeans and gray cowboy boots and had mullets.
And people would come up to him at the drugstore and be like, "Hey, we gonna win against Western this weekend?"
Yeah, that's right. And the hockey cheerleaders were kind of the top cheerleaders of the school.
Cheerleaders.
Yeah. And so what
I don't think I've ever considered the possibility. Do they wear Jason Voorhees masks?
No, they wear cheerleader outfits.
It's cold.
There was a lot of crossover between football cheerleaders, basketball cheerleaders, and hockey cheerleaders.
Yeah.
But it was always at least the sense that we had that the hockey cheerleaders were kind of the pinnacle of the cheerleader, like food pyramid. They were although the pyramid, top of the pyramid is the thing you want the least.
Well, and it's the thing,
pyramid.
But it's also the top of the pyramid is actually a place you would find a cheerleader.
Yeah, right, exactly. You'll find one at the bottom of the pyramid, too.
You find more at the bottom of the pyramid,
right?
I guess. Does professional hockey have cheer squads today? I don't
I think
so. Right?
Isn't it only basketball? I guess college football has cheerleaders, but does pro football have cheerleaders?
The Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders.
Oh, of course, duh.
Don't you have a complete collection of 1970s Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders calendars?
I did have.
Plus all the TV movies where they go on adventures and
I did have a
go
Dallas
to Gilligan's Island
Cowboy
or whatever.
cheerleaders poster. Wait a minute. I had a Dallas Cowboys poster, cheerleader poster in my closet. It was on the back of my closet door, so I could only see it when I opened the closet door. But I found that at the hockey rink. It was, and this was the Sullivan Arena downtown. I was backstage at the Sullivan for some reason, and this Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders poster was like thumbtacked up on some bulletin board.
Just like in the green room or something?
Yeah, and it was the only thing, it was the only thing in the place that wasn't nailed down. And I don't know how old, 12 years old. And I was like, and I unthumbtacked it, rolled it up, and like snuck it out of there like I'd found a Playboy in the woods.
That is a very high level of teen horny.
It was so teen horny.
Stealing posters of cheerleaders.
And it was like I was a pretty good kid in the sex department. I didn't have a girlfriend, certainly.
Pretty good kid in the sex department. Is that your memoir?
Actually, I was a pretty good kid until I was 17. That's when it all fell to shreds. But yeah, I had this. I didn't even have a Playboy. I had this poster of these comely cheerleaders,
corn-fed.
Where you could
just
kind of get a little glimpse of their underpants. And I found it at the hockey rink. What does that mean?
What if all sports had cheerleaders? Like, what if Major League Baseball had cheerleaders, like on the roof of the dugout?
I think it would be super distracting in baseball because there's all that, there's all the quiet tension in baseball.
There's no rule that says cheerleaders can't play baseball, right? I mean,
right. But
some club just has to decide.
They do a lot more miming, I think. Right. There's never a quiet minute in basketball, right? That from the beginning of the game to the end, it's a noisy sport.
But look, but baseball has plenty of times when the team thinks the crowd is too meditative and they're like, oh yeah, well, bum, 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 bum. Like you could just have cheerleaders do that instead.
There's a lot of booing in baseball now.
That's true.
And I'm offended by it. When people in the stands boo a guy, like
you can really hear it if it's like a COVID crowd and there's, a quarter capacity. You can hear every single person who's like, you suck, JP.
Yeah, the pitcher's trying to throw a guy out at first who's leading off, and of course that's the game.
That's his job. That's his job.
Yeah, why are you booing him?
If your pitcher did that, you wouldn't boo.
Yeah, you wouldn't boo is right.
I understand.
But yeah, we spent a lot of time because it was the football of high school in Alaska. We spent a lot of time at the ice rink, even though I wasn't much of a skater. I chose the ski path. We would go to hockey games because it was part of school spirit.
You
right?
Hang out with your friends.
So we're there in the stands. We're watching the hockey players. I knew the hockey players because they were just members of our school community, and I did not like them. Socially, the hockey players and I were on opposite sides of the "Have you read this book?" divide.
For all books.
Yeah, generally, if you said, "Have you read this book?" they would say either no or what.
You're a bit of a snob about your hockey team.
Super duper snob. But, in a situation like that, you're like, yay, go East High. We're battling West High. So I spent a lot of time at the rink. And honestly, I didn't understand hockey very well.
I think that's probably true of, plenty of people watching hockey today could not explain offsides or icing, right?
We have a lot of listeners to our show in Canada and in Russia.
Tons in Russia. Finland.
And in
Finland, it's like there's statues of us. They love Omnibus there.
Yeah, they do. And also probably statues of hockey players. So people are going to have to pick a side. It's like, are you on the Omnibus track or the hockey track?
There's a statue of a book, and then there's two arrows.
So this is going to be a little bit like the underhand bowling incident, as I struggle to explain that I sat in the stands all the time watching hockey, and I didn't understand it, and I didn't care.
Yeah. That's the main thing that keeps people from understanding cricket and hockey.
Yeah.
Apathy.
It was much more important to me to be in the stands, hanging out with my friends. The first time I ever heard of the Beastie Boys album License to Ill, which came out the year after I graduated from high school.
Oh my gosh, you're so much older than me.
I was at I was at like a alumni hockey game, and somebody was like, "Have you heard this record?" Because in high school, I had like a rap group. I
don't think I knew this.
Two friends and I.
I thought you were about to say it was called Two Friends.
It was called Two Friends
with the number 2.
No, we were called. This is very embarrassing.
Well,
and
I am so excited for this.
I apologize to everyone, but we were called the White Fresh Crew, and crew was spelled like Motley Crue.
Oh, I was afraid it was going to be with a K. So good call there.
No, it wasn't with a K. CRU with an umlaut E. And we did this all the time. We would go to the basement of one of our houses. We would start beatboxing, and then we would freestyle.
Would you record it?
There is a cassette of us freestyling,
and we're going to put that in right now.
And it was no, I'm afraid
we're not going to drop that in.
There was a lot of, we were using like the Fat Boys style of, kind of.
I remember.
And then we would sit and rap and walk in circles, and we thought we were really innovative. And I guess,
yes.
maybe we were the first white.
You
rap
were the
group.
only white kids trying that, I'm sure.
But then the Beastie Boys came out, and it was just blew our minds because it was their stuff was a lot better than ours.
You'd been fighting for your right to party for years.
Before
there was a name for it,
and we were doing it. We would walk in circles, like beatboxing and rapping.
It sounds like you had it down. Maybe you missed your calling.
Yeah, I sometimes think that if we had taken it a little bit more seriously. I mean, it's because I also tried to break dance in the mid 80s, and
once?
No, a few times. I mean, I still would do it if you asked me to.
That's my mistake. I've never asked you to break dance
or freestyle.
I've never asked anyone to break dance. It's not just you.
Even in my 20s, I lived in a house where I was the only white guy, and freestyling in the living room was a big part of our apartment culture. People would come over, there'd be 10 people in the living room, and everybody would be freestyling.
And did you try? Did they think you were good?
Because I was the white kid in the house, I was disinvited from really like stepping up and freestyling. But I would contribute to the beatboxing, and and whatever, and
that's right.
And I was kind of a hype man. I'd be like, "Whoa,
it's our turn to listen."
Awesome, John. Yeah. I learned a lot about freestyling.
What if Omnibus started every week where the person who did not research the topic, who did not suggest the topic, actually has to maybe the person who didn't has to freestyle some verses about the what they think the Mpemba effect is, for example.
And then over the course of a year, we would basically make an entire album. And then we could release that on
And
Bandcamp.
the other one could do the Beastie Boys thing where like they just yell the last word of what you're going to say. I'm wondering,
Mpemba!
When's this water going to freeze? Let's not do that.
Wait, you gave away the ending. So I spent as much time, I think I was as fascinated at hockey games by the Zamboni as I was by the game.
That's correct. When I take my kids to hockey games, the Zamboni beats gameplay every time.
Yeah, it's some kind of halftime or whatever, and out comes the Zamboni.
It's hypnotic.
And you just
the
watch.
Hypnotic Zamboni.
Oh, it's so wonderful. You watch it, the ice is all thrashed, and then this beautiful, and maybe this is a kind of OCD thing, but transforming the ice into this flawless surface is so satisfying. It's like vacuuming or mowing the lawn.
It is. It's crossing items off a to-do list. Like you're getting a clean desk, a clean hockey desk.
But it's like mowing a lawn, but with a tractor mower. So you're not out there.
And also a giant magic one where it's not clear how it's doing it.
How is it doing
Where'd it go?
Where'd it go? Why is the ice so smooth now? It's not just smoothing it. It also makes it shiny and beautiful.
And I think, I don't know if I knew until I was an adult, like how Zamboni works.
And at what point?
Like, I guess I thought it was like maybe shaving the ice smooth the way you would sand wood.
At what point in adulthood did you learn how a Zamboni works?
I don't know. When did I see my first hockey game? We went to like minor league hockey games in Salt Lake when I lived there. That's probably the first time I even saw one not on TV.
Yeah.
TV will often cut away from the Zamboni, not understanding the allure of the Zamboni.
That's right. That you would just watch a supercut of Zamboni operation.
In hockey, with 2 long intervals live at the game, you really get a chance to study the Zamboni in action. And I think I might have had to, not even Google, or there was no Google. I might have had to Alta Vista or ask Jeeves how a Zamboni works.
And did Jeeves tell you?
Yeah, it's not sanding it like wood. It's melting and refreezing, right?
And sanding.
Is that the final thing?
No, it's not. It's kind of the first, not sanding, but scraping. One time I went to a Seattle Thunderbirds game.
Were they here, or was it back in the day when they were at the Coliseum, or was it?
It was at the Key Arena.
Yeah.
Which
still
is
call
now
it the Coliseum.
Which is now it's
Climate Pledge Arena.
The Climate Pledge Arena.
It's been sponsored by a furniture polish called Climate Pledge.
I feel like when futurelings are listening to this episode, we will have righted the great injustice that our arena is currently called the Climate Pledge Arena.
Well, the Climate Pledge would have failed, so it's going to seem very sad to them living behind their seawalls.
Yeah,
that we thought just naming a hockey arena after good intentions would work.
It'll be returned to its rightful name, the Coliseum. But I went to see I guess it was a Thunderbirds double header or something like that, and as part of the enticement to get the audience to stay, to get the crowd to stay for the second game, can this be true? During the halftime, the Zamboni came out, and it was pulling a stage, and on the stage were the Spin Doctors. And
unannounced suddenly?
Yeah. And it was like, whoa, the announcer was like, and wait for it, it's the Spin Doctors. And they pulled the stage out to the center of the arena, and the Spin Doctors did like a 5-song set. Little Miss Can't Be Wrong,
that implies that the Spin Doctors have 5 songs.
Well, Little Miss Can't Be Wrong.
They've got
2 Princes, right?
Is Pocket Full of Kryptonite a song, or is that a lyric from one of the other songs? It's the album title.
No, it's a song.
Oh,
it's a song.
Jimmy Olsen's Blues, I think, is the name of the song. Is that right?
You know more about the Spin Doctors than I do.
I just amaze myself by being able to name three songs off that record.
It's super weird that of the two of us, you are the Spin Doctors hit.
Yeah. It turns out
machine.
Little Ken can't be wrong.
Well, wait a minute. Now I'm looking at the Spin Doctors here. Pocket Full of Kryptonite is the first one. Holy cats, they've got records all the way into 2013. So that was interesting. But again, even pulling the Spin Doctors, I think I was focused more on the Zamboni for at least the time period that it was on the ice.
What?
And
you had 2 princes before you.
Yeah.
That's what I said now. And you were watching the Zamboni?
But even more fascinating to me, at least, was when I lived in Anchorage growing up, we had a house that was not on Lake Otis. There were 2 streets that Lake Otis had streets on all 4 sides. Lake Otis was a beautiful little lake that was actually kind of in the process of returning to being a swamp. But it had a neighborhood built around it. And the streets were named after Ivy League colleges. And the neighborhood was called College Village. So Princeton and Stanford were the 2 main streets.
Do they not know what the Ivy League is in Alaska?
No. And there are plenty of streets in College Village that aren't.
Duke Street.
Duke.
University of Rhode Island Street.
And in fact, my friend Kevin lived on Duke Drive. But we lived right on the corner of Princeton and Stanford. But what that meant was our neighbors to the left had lakefront property. Our neighbors 2 doors down on the right had lakefront property. But we were cornered off and couldn't access the lake. But we could see the lake. And down the street from us...
It is funny how even the urban areas are just, I'm in the wrong place.
Are you looking at Anchorage, Minnesota?
There's a Lake Otis in Tampa.
Oh, no.
Which could not be further away.
It couldn't be further away. Well, no, it could. If it was in Miami, it would be further away.
Or like Turkey.
But our neighbors down the block, the Cusack family, who produced at least one competitive hockey player, they built an ice rink out in front of their house with walls.
What?
They had in their shed or whatever, the entire walls of a hockey rink that in the
they could
winter,
just set this up and take it down?
they would just, out in front of their house, they would wheel out the walls of a hockey rink. They would build a hockey rink. It actually had lights.
Because here in the
on
lower
towers.
48, we just put up Christmas lights. This is a different tradition.
And because the Lake Otis was frozen all winter. And then they had their own private Zamboni. They had a little tractor that had the Zamboni equipment, and they would go out there and Zamboni their own hockey rink.
Well, what's going on under there in a Zamboni? This is the question I always have about many things. What's going on under there, I will say, about Zambonis or sex or... It's a squeegee.
What's going on under that curtain?
Is it squeegeeing? Is it the whole thing just a big window washer squeegee?
Well, so we've been referring to Zambonis the same way that you kind of refer to Band-Aids.
Zamboni brand ice resurfacer.
But it is an ice resurfacer, and Zamboni is a company that was founded by Frank Zamboni. And it may surprise you that that there were no mechanized ice resurfacers until the 1950s. Prior to that,
would somebody bother to come out and?
Yeah, there'd be a little team of people that would go out there and scrape the ice and kind of broom it and resurface the ice.
Having not skated, I don't know how much of a difference it makes, but I would assume that having a bunch of skate trails and ice is not good if you're trying to.
No, you
precision skate on it later.
It can catch you and trip you and like divoted ice, because those hockey skates can really make a huge hole in the ice.
Yeah, because you turn.
And that's so resurfacing the ice was a terrible job, or a big job rather, and so Zamboni, he got his start as an ice purveyor. He was in the refrigeration business. He made ice blocks. He sold ice blocks. He was in California, so he sold ice blocks to produce vendors and dairy farmers, people that needed cold
ice houses.
Yeah, ice houses. And then as refrigeration became more affordable and he couldn't sell ice blocks, he started to try and figure out a way to keep going with his ice expertise, and he started a skating rink. And then, recognizing that this was a problem, Frank Zamboni was a real problem-solving type of guy, and he used an old surplus Jeep and tried to, and built the first sort of like driving ice resurfacer. And his innovation was that this machine it had a multi-step process. It would shave the ice, and then it would wash the ice, and then it would squeegee the ice. And the washing would kind of, would melt the top of the ice. The melted water would fill in the crevices, and then
immediately refreeze.
And then refreeze.
It hits the cold ice below. Huh.
And he worked on this. He perfected
Isn't
it.
this the thing you're always saying? First we squeegee the ice.
That's right.
Then we melt the ice. Then we sand the ice.
And then the process repeats itself.
There we go.
And there it is. That's nature.
No, but what's the thing? First we harvest the corn.
We grow the seed. Nature. We sow the seed. Nature grows the seed, and then we eat the seed.
And I still can't remember what that is, even though you've explained it to me.
It's from the young ones.
There we go. Yeah. The young ones.
And it's like all those things that you watch in early high school. It made such an impression on me because Neil, the hippie, was like, "We sow the seed, and nature grows the seed," and it just stuck.
Yeah, I can quote every line of every movie I saw before 1990, and I can't quote a single line of any movie I saw after 1990. It's very sad.
The young ones taught me so much. And so, as Zamboni perfected his machine, the reason a Zamboni is so big is that most of the size of a Zamboni is actually a tank that is collecting the shavings in the form of snow. And so if you spend a lot of time at an ice rink, you'll know that the Zamboni, after it leaves the ice, it goes and dumps a big, huge pile of snow, ice shavings.
Outside?
Well, sometimes, yeah. Well, I guess it's outside.
In the tunnel?
Well, where is it? Yeah, it's outside. They go outside and dump these ice shavings. And in Alaska, because it's freezing outside, the ice shavings just kind of hang out there. So Zamboni is he's very protective of his name. He, unlike Band-Aid, never succumbed to feeling like you could call any ice resurfacer a Zamboni. He protects his trademark and
zealously.
Yeah,
Zealous Zamboni.
If you go write a song that's like the Zamboni was out of control, like you'll hear from Zamboni.
I think you mean the Zamboni brand ice resurfacer was out of control.
Well,
and it wouldn't be out of control because it's the top of the line.
Zambonis don't go out of control, so you can use the name of a competing ice resurfacing.
It's like
company.
the Simpsons joke about sleeping in a dumpster. No, I wish it was a dumpster brand trash receptacle.
And there actually is a Simpsons episode about the Zamboni. The Zamboni appears. But Zambonis, they, as part of the washing of the ice, they use warm water because the warm water, does a better job of
quicker
melting the ice and creating this wonderful surface. But also, one of the premises of using warm water is a kind of global recognition that might be a false recognition, a false positive that warm water actually freezes faster than cold water.
I don't think I ever grew up with this conviction. Do you recall kind of hearing this in the ether?
Yes, because and this wasn't true of my family, but in my experience at other people's houses, there were enough people that would fill their ice trays with warm water before putting it into the refrigerator. And for a long time, I thought it was because warm water makes more delicious ice. And then I realized that no, warm water goes into the hot water tank and sits in that weird environment. Really, cold water is the more delicious of the two, the less polluted. Coming
straight from some Alaskan glacier.
Yeah, that's right. And then it was explained to me by somebody, no, warm water actually, freezes faster and into better ice.
I guess with the Zamboni, there might be a physical advantage to having it be warm water because that would melt the current scratched layer faster. That's someplace you want melting before refreezing, which is not true in an ice cube tray.
Right, but also the faster refreezing means that you can get back out on the ice faster, right? So if you Zamboni and then it has to sit there and takes 10, 15 minutes to refreeze, which it doesn't. All the hockey players are standing around kissing the cheerleaders, and then they lose their natural essence.
Well, the players aren't coming back for 20 minutes, but you need to have 10 minutes for the puck, the all-state puck throwing challenge, and the Montgomery Ward shoot off, and all that kind of halftime stuff.
Yeah, and the funny referee that goes out and intentionally slips and falls on his butt.
So when speed is of the essence, use warm water. This does not make sense to me.
Well, when Zamboni first was developing his machines, this was not a universally recognized effect, although it had been noticed and recorded as early as Aristotle.
Aristotle was like, "Hey, my warm water freezes in the morning faster than my cold water."
Yeah, he
remember to like and share and subscribe to the channel.
He said in general that that this was a kind of widely observed.
Even the Greeks thought about
truth.
This.
And the snows of Mount Ida.
It doesn't get that cold in Athens. It
doesn't, but Mount Ida, those snows are enough to make one suffer.
I guess that's what I hear. But are Aristotle and his buddies really wandering up into Macedonia that much?
No, but they're freezing ice. I mean, everybody's trying to freeze ice, right? It's got to get. Well, it gets cold in the Middle East. It snows in Jerusalem.
There are plenty of mountains in Greece, but I mean, in Aristotle's day, you would have to go find one of those. Like the winter in Athens, you're not going to get ice.
If you're going to make an Arnold Palmer, doesn't matter whether you're in Athens or in Augusta, Georgia.
Doesn't matter whether you're in Athens, Georgia, or Athens, Greece. But here's the thing. I mean, I don't want to jump the gun here, but the thing I've never understood about this is surely in the process of making ice out of warm water, it would have to pass through the state of being cold water, and therefore would take longer. This is Zeno's paradox. You have to turn the warm water into cold water and then the cold water into ice.
Well, right. It would seem that the laws of thermodynamics would just make it a self-explanatory that you could not. I mean, one thing was closer to being cold, and so would get cold faster.
And Aristotle didn't have the first law of thermodynamics, so I'll forgive him.
But Aristotle did have the his theory of antiperistasis, which is his recognition that the quality of a thing is often heightened by its relativity to the force of the opposite thing.
This is why people end up taking pepper for a sneezing fit or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the principle of homeopathy.
Well, it's the principle of Ritalin.
I guess, yeah. So sometimes it works.
And this was, this is one of Aristotle's trying to recognize the forces of nature, and over the course of Western science, the course of the history of Western science, this was discovered and rediscovered a few different times and recognized, I think, just in nature, like discovered by observation. Descartes had a theory of why warm water freezes faster than cold water. So this is something that's...
Everyone just assumes it does and is trying to explain it.
No, I think it's something that people are observing this actually sort of happening and trying to explain it. Descartes had what he called the vortex theory, which was that there was no empty space in the world. All empty space was filled with matter.
Correct.
And
essentially.
And so he saw that as you heated water, it became less dense, but that space would be filled with matter more. I don't understand the vortex theory.
This is gibberish, Descartes.
Yeah, it was.
Which feels good.
Yeah,
because he's a very smart guy. I really feel like I really like sticking it to him.
I could explain it if I wanted to, but right now I don't, because I want to bounce to the next thing. But Descartes also observed this in nature,
and he's living somewhere where he could actually put out, presumably, a glass of warm water and a glass of cold water in the winter and check it out.
So
there could be firsthand observation.
This is one of the there are a lot of doubters, and one of the primary ways of throwing shade on this observation is that there are so many factors to take into consideration. If you just put a warm glass of water and a cold glass of water out into the backyard,
mm-hmm.
What is the type of glass? What is the temperature of the glass? What are the impurities in the water? What are the factors? And
sure.
the naysayers are looking for all the reasons why this isn't true or isn't possible.
Descartes got haters.
I mean, that's what naysayers do. And also, what does freezing mean? Is right? Am I right? Is freezing the first thing to form ice on the surface? Is freezing the one that freezes all the way through, so it's frozen solid?
Sure.
Is freezing the first glass to get to 0 degrees Celsius?
And before you have good thermometers, this is really a case where the act of observing might change. If you're poking your finger in there to see how deep it's frozen.
Well, even the presence of the thermometer.
Yeah.
But all of this still, it would seem that if you put a glass of water that was 100 degrees in a freezer and a glass of water that was 33 degrees.
Yeah. Sorry, Celsius users.
The fact that it's still a subject of debate, whether or not the hot water freezes faster, it would seem that the hot water would be hot long before or long after the cold water froze.
That's what I'm saying.
So it's happening. Something is happening.
You've really boiled it down there for me.
Thank you.
By deciding that something is happening.
Well, and that's my explanation of Descartes' vortex theory. Something is happening.
By the way, I don't know about you, but I am very pro Fahrenheit, even though, I'm from the backward country that's not on the metric system.
Right.
I just think Celsius does not have enough granularity for the, it's better for scientific applications, like what's the temperature on Jupiter right now, or what's the temperature range this Bunsen burner can produce.
So you're a Fahrenheit chauvinist.
But for the narrow range of human life and comfort, I think you want to have
finer gradation.
Yeah, you can feel every change in a Fahrenheit degree. Every change in a Celsius degree is what, 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah, 36 degrees Celsius.
You're gonna need
doesn't even sound hot.
You're going to need a decimal point to say like what your preferred indoor temperature is.
Right.
Whereas in Fahrenheit, it's very easy to say that 71 is a little different than 72, and you can feel it.
So do you feel that there's any movement within the scientific community to return to Fahrenheit as a global standard for describing temperature?
Well, I don't know. It's just better conversationally.
Let's start now.
I mean, we can start on Canada. I feel like we have enough cultural pull to get Canada to admit that, look, it really makes more sense when you're just describing for thermostat purposes, right, or even for weather. It makes more sense to use Fahrenheit.
How do you like kilograms? How do you feel about imperial measurements? It kind of doesn't make sense to describe distance by the length of a king's foot or the length from your elbow to your wrist.
Well, that's all been redefined, so it's super futuristic now. Now it's all
the length of time
of something
it takes for an atom
or something.
Well, I agree. I'm a Fahrenheit guy through and through.
Glad we agree on this.
Yeah,
I'm tired of feeling like kind of a second-rate world power because I'm using Fahrenheit, not the one that scientists use.
Yeah, Mr. Fahrenheit actually kind of plays into this story at some point.
He does.
Yeah. But what brought this theory into, what really reintroduced it into the field of science, because this was some kind of Cartesian vortex, like not discredited, but superseded science. There's a lot of science out there that is superseded by further science. We no longer talk about the four humors, but we do continue to describe the effects of...
Right, those were attempts to describe the same phenomena we see today.
Right. But what brought this into sort of scientific contention was an event that happened in Tanzania in 1963.
Of all places.
Of all the places, Tanzania.
Was Tanzania already Tanzania in 1963? I guess it was.
Yeah, well, 1963 would have been very early in...
When did Tanganyika and Zanzibar combined in 1961 to form Tanzania?
So just a few years later... an English professor by the name of Dennis Gordon Osborne was brought into a Tanzanian class. He was, he's a professor who had a relationship with Africa. He ended up going to Africa, teaching in African colleges.
I assume he's British because he's named Dennis?
He's British, and it's Dennis, Denis, so it's like Dennis Johnson.
Why do they do that? No, Dennis Johnson had the 2 N's.
Did he have 2 N's?
He did. I don't know who had, I don't know if there's a famous 1N Dennis in sports. Dennis Leary has the 1N.
I'm referring to Dennis Johnson, the author of the book Jesus' Son.
Oh,
the book from the 90s that had such a profound effect on me. And it was actually made into a film starring the extremely beautiful Billy Crudup in his youth.
Not NBA Finals MVP Supersonics legend Dennis Johnson with 2 N's.
2 different Dennis Johnsons. That's
how I tell them apart.
That mistake represents a cultural divide between the two of us.
I'm the jock. You're the nerd.
That's right.
This is like Ogden Nash with the 1N Dennis and the 2N Dennis.
Except Jesus' Son is a book about, drugs.
It's not
so I'm not a nerd, Ken.
I'm reading cool books like that the hockey guys wouldn't.
But so Dennis Osborne, visits a school in Tanzania to give a physics lecture to the class. And a student in the class by the name of Erasto Bartholomeo Mpemba stands up at the end of the lecture and asks, why is it that things that are warmer freeze faster than things that are colder? And this was an effect that he had noticed because he, as a summer job, and it's always summer in Tanzania.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's too much snow and ice in Tanzania.
But he made ice cream and sold ice cream as a kind of, as like a side gig. He actually, Mpemba wanted to be a game warden and was, had ambitions to get into wildlife management.
Good job in Tanzania,
yeah.
Home of Serengeti National Park and all the big safari tourism.
But so Mpemba stands up and asks this question that he had observed in his own experience making ice cream. And everyone in the class laughs at him, including Professor Osborne, who's like, well, what are you talking about? That's that's not true. He
thinks he's being pointed to some urban legend or pseudoscience.
Yeah, harump. And, but Mpemba kind of, maintains his...
he's seen what he's seen in the ice cream truck.
He maintains his truth. But Osborne goes back to the lab and curious about the kind of confidence of this young student, he starts to experiment and discovers that he also observes this phenomenon.
He can replicate it. And Osborne was not previously aware that Aristotle and Descartes and others had spoken of this. Like, this is new to him.
Yeah, and because when we think of Aristotle and Descartes, we don't first think of them as
water freezers.
Yeah, or like thermodynamicists.
Right.
But Osborne is a physicist, and so he reaches out to Mpemba and says, "You have opened my eyes to this like fundamental truth of the physical world." And the two of them, so this happened in 1963, but the two of them co-author a paper in 1969 describing the phenomenon and kind of speculating about its causes.
So they are able to, in a lab, say, yeah, this is happening, but we don't know why.
Mpemba goes on to become a game warden and eventually, I think, heads up the Tanzanian Park Service.
Oh, it's funny. So it's named the Mpemba effect popularly, but he's not a scientist. By career.
Like a wildlife management scientist.
I guess that's true. He's not a physicist.
But so this kind of, this is the type of thing that scientists love because it's a thing that you should be able to test in your home freezer, right? You don't have to have a particle accelerator to test whether hot water freezes faster.
A million science fairs could be performed on this. And plus the finding is so paradoxical because again, how can it be?
Right. How can it be?
Do we have some options? Can you walk us through the...
Yes. So there are a lot of theories, and the first one, and the most common kind of attempt to debunk it, is to say that evaporation is playing a role here. The hot water is evaporating, and so
there's less volume of water by the time
just the process of heat transfer of evaporation
that does cool things
is cooling it down faster.
The water needs some energy to turn into a gas that comes out of the system as heat. It's the reason why the breeze cools you down when it blows on wet skin, but not dry skin.
Right. But controlling for evaporation, it appears that evaporation isn't the cause.
Oh, it happens even if you control for that.
Yeah. There are theories that the frost that first forms on the cold water actually insulates it. And the hot water without that layer of insulation is able to freeze faster.
I don't understand, but it seems so. These must all come down to non-uniformities in the temperature of the volume of water being experimented on, right? Because if the temperature was uniform throughout, then the layer of frost thing wouldn't matter much because the hot water would eventually get to that point of having its own layer of frost at that temperature, and then it would insulate too. So something physically different has to be happening maybe over space in the two quantities.
So that's why the container plays such a role in the experiment. A scientist by the name of David Auerbach used glass beakers in a super cold solution, and what happens in a lot of these situations is that supercooling happens, which is to say that water doesn't necessarily crystallize at zero. You can supercool water so that it is, 20 degrees Celsius below freezing.
But it's still a liquid. Because you've done something to keep the crystallization from starting. The second crystals did form, zap, it would become ice.
Right. And that's what happens eventually, right? That some impurity or some motion turns it instantly to ice. But which one freezes faster if both are below the temperature of freezing?
I see.
And
does it hold? The warmer one will still freeze faster in a supercooled solution?
I think in a supercooled solution, it's just the first beaker that gets bonked, if you know what I'm saying.
I guess that's true.
The first beaker that gets bonked. There's a theory that dissolved gases are playing a role, that the hotter water releases more gas, right? Gas is a larger part of the solution.
Okay.
And the gas is that forms pockets of cold that contribute to the faster freezing of the water.
The water, in theory, is a certain temperature, but it's not uniform. The gas is creating little coldnesses. And this is, part of freezing water is that outside freezes, it freezes inward. Right.
And so, there's less of a center if there's more dissolved gas. The molecules are more diffuse.
But if you had told me these were like Aristotle or Descartes' goofy pseudoscience theories, I would totally believe it, because these all sound as crazy as the ancient or 14th century stuff.
Well, this is the problem that in trying to describe the phenomena, people are just throwing frogs at a wall, trying to see which one sticks. And no one in a truly scientific, a completely controlled environment can actually demonstrate it.
Can actually demonstrate that it exists, or can isolate the reasoning?
Can actually demonstrate that it exists.
Oh.
Another theory is that at high temperatures, hydrogen forms stronger bonds with one another. And so as it cools, the crystallization happens faster because the hydrogen is more bonded to one another. It's more of
so ice is happening at a higher temperature.
Right. Like it's the hexagonal, it's nucleization at a hexagonal.
That's weird though, because those all seem like they would be small enough differences that they would not have been observable to, say, an Aristotle or something. Like ice is not going to form at 50 degrees no matter how strong those hydrogen bonds are. Like it seems like it would be an unobservable difference, but
something's happening.
Something's happening.
There's the idea that the micro bubbles are performing a role in basically transferring heat to. I mean, it's all got to be about getting the heat in either solution out.
And somehow the
faster.
Heat is leaving faster.
The heat of hot water leaves faster than the heat from cold water.
And it happens so much faster that it overtakes the it can't just be that it's freezing
slightly faster.
Yeah, because if it's freezing slightly faster, you'd still have to pass through a greater temperature range, and therefore the colder one would turn to ice sooner. It actually has to outstrip whatever the difference is. So
what we have now is as recently as 2016, this was still being written about in scientific journals. In fact, it's still being written about. And there's, here's an article in the Royal Society from September of 2020.
Still trying to hash it out?
Yeah, where the title of the article is "Observing the Mpemba Effect with Minimal Bias and the Value of the Mpemba Effect to Scientific Outreach and Engagement." So they're talking about this being a pathway,
like an academic.
Yeah, and a way to get people interested in science, and it is often used to to try and entice kids to see this
equipment.
Yeah, common thing that you can do.
The only measurement thing you need is a thermometer, which you probably have.
It's a real Cub Scout trick, and hopefully it makes kids interested in figuring out why. Here's an article in physics.org.
Do you think one of the reasons it doesn't get solved is because of the sense of scientists that it's beneath them, that this is not the cutting edge of anything, that it's a bit of a curiosity?
Well, there are so many people in the world that because it hasn't been disproved, there are a lot of people that assume that means it's been proved. And so snowmaking equipment often uses warm water.
Oh, so industry is still acting as if it's true.
Yes. And so there are a lot of scientists who believe that this is some puzzling phenomenon that they can turn the bright light of science upon and finally be able to say, this is like cold fusion. It's an
illusion.
It's an illusion because there's somebody is introducing some uncontrolled for element that it's perfectly explainable, but it remains something that you can observe, that a common person can observe in their home freezer, that can't really be duplicated in an environment where all conditions are controlled for. And so it's not convinced, scientists aren't convinced, science isn't convinced, but
typically in cases like that, the casual observers are wrong.
Right. It's the moon effect.
You're right. Yeah. It seems so convincing to the senses somehow, but there's a cognitive bias involved of some kind.
But even as you say, even if that's true at the minute level,
yeah,
you would expect to put a hot glass of water and a cold glass of water in the freezer and to come back in 15 minutes and one of them is frozen and one of them is still warm.
Clearly, it's a proof of the existence of God. God is pranking us. He allows common Mr. Softy and good humor men to observe this phenomenon, but he does not allow scientists to. And he's having a good laugh at us all.
It's one of the reasons that I'm a religious person.
And that concludes the Mpemba effect. Entry 813.JB3829, certificate number 25481, in the omnibus. In our day, the omnibus was available on social media. I know. It's problematic.
I know.
But
I know.
Why did we do all that?
No. I'm sorry.
Why did we think we had to say everything all the time? But Omnibus did so at Omnibus Project. I met Ken Jennings on Twitter. You can find John at patreon.com/John Roderick. You could email us at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. Send us your, hey, thermodynamics experts, send us your critiques of our bad pop science here.
Well, and also Cartesians who know more about the
vortex effect.
The vortex effect than I did.
Please cart-splain the vortex effect to us.
Break it down for me.
Because really, for my money, I think we did the right thing by not explaining it. I wasn't living and dying on on Descartes' weird theory.
Well, and I like to give futurelings an opportunity, right, to be
Sure.
righter than me,
Yeah.
And in this case, I didn't even pretend.
Yeah, and in this case, they're just less bored than you, I think. You can send explications of Cartesian vortex theory to theomnibusproject@gmail.com. If you would like to send us physical artifacts, 2 glasses of water at different temperatures, not going to work in the mail. By the time we get it at P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155.
That's right. The first law of thermodynamics does apply in the mail.
Don't send ice in the mail. It's one of the main things they tell you. In the mail today, I don't know if this counts as omnibus mail, but Don sent us a preprint copy of a book he's written called The Fourth Great Transformation, which appears to be about...
Sounds religious.
No, I mean, it is. There is a sense in which transhumanism and movements like that do become religions for nerds. In this case, though, it seems to be pretty strictly scientifically based. He has theories about how advances in AI and genetic engineering are pretty much going to, are surprisingly abruptly, are going to create a new
race,
a new form of human life.
Super beings.
And we are I thought it would be appropriate to plug it on Anonymous, since we are clearly speaking to the results of Dr. Simborg's theories here.
Right. Does it mean I am died? Does it mean you are died?
All of us? I would presume so. Well, I don't know how benevolent they will be.
But they'll also probably live forever.
I'm mentioned in the book, but only because I lost to Watson. I'm a sign of the old life getting replaced.
Did I watch you compete with Watson once?
I don't know. Like, it was on TV.
No. That time that we went to the University of Washington and you were down at Kane Hall, and that
wasn't Watson. That was a UW, I think, doctoral student who enjoyed quiz bowls and game shows. Had built a question answering engine. You know, he'd fed it tens of thousands of quiz bowl questions and wanted to demonstrate that it could do pattern recognition and beat a human player.
How did he get you to acquiesce to this?
Oh, I know Jordan a bit, and and as you know, I live 10 minutes from campus, so right. Sure, I'll come down and get my butt kicked by a computer.
Why was I there? Boy, talk about bored. I didn't have anything to do that day.
Except you weren't. You were like weirdly into it.
I was kind of into it.
Did I know you were in the U District? Maybe
Yeah, you invited me to go. It's not a thing that I stumbled in.
No, but I feel like we were texting about something else, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm on my way to do this," and you were like, "Really? What classroom?" Like you were suddenly very eager, despite your "I'm not a nerd except compared to the hockey team" cred.
Yeah, I may have been there recruiting Boy Scouts.
I don't think I ever would have said, "Hey, come watch me lose to a quiz bowl playing robot."
Yeah, perhaps not. I used to be more well-traveled than now within Seattle.
he would actually cross the ship canal.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Don, for sending us. The book is The Fourth Great Transformation.
Not looking forward to it, frankly.
You don't want me to leave you a copy?
No. I'm looking forward to the book. I'm not looking forward to the experience.
You're looking forward to being rendered extinct by whoever these new superhumans are.
No.
Got it.
No, thank you.
In the meantime, before we're replaced, you can keep Omnibus going. This archive will only be definitively created with the support of our well-wishers in this time, because, the underwear manufacturers are not paying the bills, frankly. We love them. But,
we do.
But they don't meet our dehumidifier expenses.
Well, no, advertising is not a good way to fund.
It's no longer a podcasting model, right? It was.
I mean, it still is, but it's just bad. It's bad at it. We don't. Ads are not the way. We're making this, and now all podcasters are making this fantastic content, and we're trying to monetize it by...
Are you saying all podcasters are making fantastic content?
Every podcast is amazing, including Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert.
Each more amazing than the last.
But, we're trying to sell it the same way that you try to make money off a football game, and it's just not the way things are done. You can only sell so many
We need to do it the
mattresses.
way... Yeah, you need to do it the way people sell mixtapes on street corners. Yeah. That's the correct model. Yeah. To be like, hey, if you want to listen to this, cross my palm with silver.
It's hard to say to somebody, if you love this program, buy another mattress. But it's easy to say, if you love this program, give us $5 a month. And I think that crowdfunding is the future.
Especially if when you contribute $5 a month, you receive an extra entry of the podcast.
Right. And other amazing things.
Because the main problem about Omnibus is the scarcity of it. It only comes out every 3.5 days. And that's an eternity for something this good.
Yeah. Right,
so if you have not considered this, if I've suddenly opened your eyes and you want to be part of the future of this endeavor, you can go to patreon.com/omnibusproject and pledge there. You could also find your fellow supporters, your other loyalists, by looking for the futurelings wherever fandom is sold. Facebook, Reddit, Discord. The truth is out there.
Futurelings from our vantage point in your distant past, when human beings were still top dogs.
The third great transformation had happened.
Yeah.
Which I assume is
we no longer have to fight bears.
The forebrain evolving?
But we do have to fight bugs. Right?
But fewer.
Well, except for the little bugs that get inside of our lungs and cause us to really die.
Yes. I thought you meant the actual bugs. And we're doing a great job of making them extinct with pesticide runoff.
I've been fighting some sugar ants lately.
Oh, man.
And for years I really subscribed to the belief that you don't fight sugar ants by squishing them.
You get more sugar ants with honey.
You do. You get a lot more sugar ants with honey. But lately, I'm just so frustrated with them that when I see them, I squish them.
I do too. And you really just are seized with the futility of it.
Yeah.
Because you're bang, 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 and you've just killed 20 ants, which would be great with any other kind of bug. You'd be like, I did it. Problem solved.
That's right.
But with sugar ants, they're
taunting you.
They're going to come back like in a Salvador Dali movie.
But anyway, futurelings, we hope that this catastrophe we fear may never come, and that humans live forever and rule the world and have to stop having babies because there are too many olds. But if the worst comes soon and we are buried under boomers that won't die, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.